Hello and welcome to the latest Reuters Events webinar, Energy Disruption, How Great People and Organisations Innovate in Times of Rapid Change. My name's Charlotte and I head up the Nuclear Energy and Oil and Gas team here at Reuters Events, and I'll be hosting this webinar and handing over shortly to our presenter today, Jose Pires, who is the founder and president at the Global Excellence in Innovation. There are around 2,000 of you signed up today, which is great, particularly considering the current climate. It's more crucial now than ever that the energy industry continues to come together to share insights and strategize solutions. To that regard, you do have the facility to ask Jose questions throughout this session, so please do, and we'll try to get to those at the end. During this 1-hour session, we will explore how to blend disciplined innovation methods with elements of venture capitalism, crowdsourcing, and collaborative leadership to deliver rapid and sustainable business improvements and innovations in the energy industry. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Jose, who is the founder and president, as mentioned, at Global Excellence and Innovation. Jose, over to you.
Thank you, Charlotte, and hello, everyone. This is Jose Pires, founder and president of Global Excellence and Innovation. It's a real privilege to be here with you today. Very excited about talking about energy disruption and how great people and organizations innovate in times of rapid change. Innovation acceleration is a very complex topic with many interconnected components. And I think it's important that we start with the end in mind. And in the end, we must be clear about our purpose and how we're going to get there. So a lot of the concepts that I'm going to talk about today will be confusing concepts. It will be challenging concepts. They will seem contradictory because what I'm going to be covering today is not only about innovation acceleration, but how do we achieve greatness as individuals and organizations. And the world of greatness is very confusing and is filled with seemingly contradictions. These are forces pulling in very different directions, like purpose and discipline, linear and non-linear, work and life, cost reductions and revenue growth, exponential technologies and human values of trust, collaboration, vulnerability. The world of greatness is an and world, not an or world. Mediocrity spends endless hours debating the options, while greatness knows that the best solutions are not in the balance, but in the blend of these very contradictory forces. And there is no greater contradiction than excellence and innovation, because these are forces that are pulling in very different directions in most organizations, and they don't like each other. The world of excellence is all about setting performance standards, optimizing processes, squeezing efficiencies out of systems. The world of innovation is about taking different perspectives at problems and opportunities. It's about breaking and bending the current system to achieve tenfold improvements, not just 10%. The world of innovation knows that you can't design cars by squeezing efficiencies out of horses. So the question becomes, which one do we choose? And the answer is both. Because in the world of excellence, we must optimize our current systems and we must derive the most efficiencies that we can from what we have. But we must also challenge the assumptions about our systems and how we approach the work that we do. And the world of innovation allows us to take that different perspective. But greatness is not achieved by simply innovating without purpose. Greatness is achieving by scaling innovation with a very clear purpose. And the best way to scale innovation is by applying excellence to the innovation principles that we're going to be talking about. So this is very important because the practices that I'm going to highlight are the practices that embed excellence and innovation in an interconnected system to achieve consistent greatness. And if there is anything that's common among these two, is a disciplined approach. And we're going to think about discipline not as following a regimented set of rules, but discipline as having consistency with your purpose as an individual and as an organization. Now, these items that I'm going to cover today in summary form, they don't come from my ability to predict the future. I do not have this visionary capability to know what the future holds. It comes from understanding that the great leaders and organizations of our time, they experiment, they learn what works, They understand why it works and they replicate that. And I'm very indebted to all of the great organizations that I have an opportunity to collaborate with and learn from, and over 30,000 excellence and innovation practitioners that build the body of knowledge that I'm going to share with you today. But there are 5 organizations that are more important in this body of knowledge. And they are so because in these organizations, I was not collaborating with them and providing advice. I was supporting and leading excellence and innovation acceleration from within. So a little bit of background on those because they provide a critical components for and concepts that we're going to discuss later on as we get into the system. So I was a kid who grew up in Brazil. I was fortunate to do well in school. I was educated in the United States. My background is a combination of electrical, mechanical engineering and physics, and investment banking and entrepreneurship. My first job was working as a design engineer for Sony Electronics. My boss was Hayashi-san, a great Japanese designer. But I was super excited of working with Sony, but I was highly confused at the same time because I had been all over the world, literally, and very excited about joining what was at that time one of the leading technological companies in the world, but a bit overwhelmed by the new tasks that I had to take on that organization. And to summarize the lessons from Sony, and specifically from a great mentor that I had there called Shigo Hayashi, Hayashi-san spoke very little English, and my Japanese was not very good. So we communicated in this hybrid version of Jinglish, and he would give me some very tough assignments. And one of the first assignments that I had in the organization was to identify over 100 innovations in my first week or two at work. Needless to say that I was overwhelmed. I thought about quitting. I thought I was inept, and I started blaming all my college professors for not preparing me for the real world. The lesson was that Hayashi-san was allowing me to take different perspectives at the incredibly sophisticated technological barriers that we had at Sony at that time. And he knew that I had only a short period of time to apply those new perspectives to the way that work was done. Because in the mind of an expert, there's only one way, and in the mind of the novice, there are many ways. So the first lesson here is that innovation requires this blending of the mind of the novice with the mind of the expert. Most important is that innovation doesn't care about gender, race, age, or how many certificates I have hanging on the I love myself wall. When it comes to real innovation, real innovators are only revealed by the test of execution. You must do. When I left Sony and I joined a startup company in California, our goal was to truly change the world. Cymer SML was a company that in the early 1990s was not known. We had identified new technologies that could be used for semiconductor microlithography to allow Moore's law to continue in the semiconductor industry. For those of you who don't know what Moore's law is the ability to shrink circuits to about half of their size every 18 months or so at affordable cost. We had reached a critical time in the technology development of mercury arc lamps that we could no longer do that. And this company was created to allow for the scalability of semiconductor lithography technologies to deliver the next level of semiconductor manufacturing. So we had the most intelligent, brightest minds with respect to excimer lasers in the world in the room. But what we learned from that experience is that to scale innovation and apply those excellence concepts to innovation, to truly scale, to be a dominant player in your industry, is not enough just to have the brightest people in the room. You must have a clear common purpose and develop collaborative leadership skills so that we can achieve that common purpose. The lesson from Nestle is different. Nestle is an organization at the time with 350,000 employees with 585 business units around the world. The question is, where do you start on an organization like that? And the lesson from Nestle is simple. You must develop a tremendous empathy for culture, especially when you're in organizations and ecosystems that are that large. And culture is local, regardless of the dimensions of the organization. You must look at culture locally. And we all know that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and excellence and innovation acceleration just become side dishes. So it's very important that we are empathetic to the culture of the organizations that we're working with, and we meet them where they're at. When I left Nestle and I joined Black & Veatch is a 100-year-old engineering construction infrastructure company with more than 12,000 engineers globally. They're very smart, but highly traditional and skeptical of anything new. Oh, and by the way, they have been innovating for over 100 years. So how do you come into an organization that's established, traditional, filled with very capable, intelligent, and skeptical individuals, and you accelerate innovation in that ecosystem? So the lessons from Black & Veatch is simple. You have to save the jargon, and you have to create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means. You must adopt an improvement and innovation venture capitalist approach for value creation. Lastly, we had Endeavor Corporation. Endeavor is an oil and gas company that has been around for many years, like most oil and gas companies. But Endeavor in 2010 started a major transformation with its new CEO, a transformation that was built on operational excellence and entrepreneurship. It was an organization that wanted to be different, not just for the sake of being different, but for achieving extraordinary results. And to go for extraordinary when it comes to innovation, you must define it in ordinary terms, in ways that everyone in the organization can access it. And that's the main lesson from Endeavor. And we're going to cover some of these organizations a little bit more later on. But let's first deal with the challenge at hand. In 10 years, it's predicted that 40% of the Fortune 500 companies will no longer exist. Now, before you panic and you start saying, oh my goodness, I'm part of a Fortune 500 company, I'm no longer exist, I want you to pay attention to the date on this slide. This was a part of a presentation that was done in 2011. It's not new. The current pandemic that we're experiencing that is forcing so many organizations to adapt to new ways of doing things is a large event, but it's not a black swan event. If you read the book Black Swan, it will talk about specifically about pandemics not being black swan events because they are highly predictable events. However, they are truly a transformational event for so many industries. But these transformations have been happening for industries in the past, over the centuries. So if we look back to 2011, when this was said, the prediction was 40% of the Fortune 500 companies no longer exist. And people would panic about that and say, well, this is fear mongering. Well, if we fast forward to where we are today in 2020, just about 9 years later, we actually can look at the data and see that more than 40% of the Fortune 500 companies no longer exist. The question becomes, what does the future look like then? Now that not only we have this natural progression and destructive forces happening in industry, but we have this major event on top of that. And how are we going to react to this? So the question becomes, what is the best way of predicting the future and how we're going to adapt to this future? And I'm going to share with you what most organizations do, especially large organizations. They get into very large meetings and they discuss what this future may look like. And they will talk with experts about it. They will do forecasting. They will do scenario planning. These are all worthwhile activities, but the only thing that we know about these activities is that they cannot reliably predict the future. How many millions of dollars have we spent just on scenario planning? And take a look at those scenarios and see, looking back, how many of them accounted for a global pandemic happening in 2020? How many of them accounted for a drop in revenue, not of 20 or 30%, but in some cases of 80% plus? So the question remains, what is the best way of predicting the future? There are only two types of people who predict the future: those who don't know and those who don't know that they don't know. The only way and the best way to predict the future is truly to create it. And this is not new. It's not something that we have developed in the last few years. We can go all the way back to Abraham Lincoln and talking about the need to predict the future by creating. And how do we create this future? The best way to create the future is to set the stage for innovation in your organization. It requires disciplined people, it requires disciplined thinking, and it requires disciplined action. So let's start with the fundamentals on that discipline. The first question that you need to answer is, what is innovation? And how are you going to define innovation in ordinary terms in your organization to achieve extraordinary results? Now, if I ask you this question, I'd like you to think about this on your own as I pose the question. Most people will start thinking about technology. Is innovation about technology? Some of you maybe start thinking, well, the root word of innovation, inno, that means new idea. Okay, you're getting there. A new idea is part of innovation, but is a new idea enough to have extraordinary innovation? And are you defining that in ordinary terms? And the answer is no. I have lots of new ideas. Most of them are not very good. There may be a subset of those new ideas that will create value. So maybe I'm getting closer now. Innovation are new ideas that create value. Good, we're getting closer. But from a practical standpoint, when I go into organizations, what I see is a cemetery of new ideas that create value. And it's everywhere. And it's very large. So it cannot be complete. A complete definition of innovation cannot just be the new ideas that create value. The biggest challenge of innovation hasn't to do with ideas, hasn't to do with methods, hasn't anything to do with technology. The biggest challenge of innovation is the implementation and execution portion. So you cannot have a full definition of innovation if you don't have implementation as part of that definition. So to make extraordinary innovations in your organization, you have to define it in ordinary terms. And the ordinary definition of innovation, one that everybody can access in the organization, is the implementation of new ideas that create value. That's a very beginning step, very important step, that we develop this common language and common fundamentals in the organization about what innovation really is. Everyone in the organization should have the ability to implement new ideas that create value. Now, to be fair, innovation doesn't happen one size fits all. There are at least 3, if not more, levels of business innovation. I'm going to focus on the top 3 here, on research done over thousands of the most innovative organizations in the world, not just from the standpoint that they create innovation, but they create innovations that create value. Now, when you look at what they have a portfolio of innovations. And in a very mature organization, that portfolio will look about 70% with core innovations, 20% with adjacent innovations, and 10% with disruptive innovations. Now, there's no doubt that as you move towards disruptive innovation, you're going to have potential higher returns, but you also have potential higher risks. So core innovations is just that, new ideas to the core of the business. Adjacent innovations have to do with ideas that grow and extend the capabilities of your business. And disruptive are ideas that disrupt the business model. It's not about technology. Typically, technology accelerators and growth accelerators may be under the disruptive portion, but make no mistake, technology by itself is not disruptive. It's only disrupted when it's properly used to disrupt a business model. And it's very important that we understand that this 3 levels of innovation happen across the most innovative organizations in the world. It's important that your professionals understand that about 90% of what happens is very much within their reach at the core and the adjacencies of the business. Now, disruptive and transformation innovations require a slightly different mechanism for execution. It's beyond the scope of today to go through all of these different mechanisms, but it's important that we understand that 90% of innovation happens with mechanisms that I'm going to cover today, and 10% of innovation happens with special structures and innovation mechanisms that I'm not going to cover very in depth today. I'm just going to highlight some of the components that they have. Now, the media covers 100% of disruptive innovation. And this is very important because your professionals start looking at themselves as not the innovative type because they're not working on those types of disruptive innovations. So it's very important from a communication and education standpoint within organizations that we understand the multiple levels of innovation, and we understand that our professionals, I don't care if you are doing heat exchange replacements, you have the ability to innovate. That could be core, that could be adjacent innovations. And it's very important that we develop the understanding that innovation is democratized and we all can innovate in our organizations, even if we're not working on the most disruptive cases that we see highlighted by the media. Now, the pillars of success for innovation acceleration are tricky because from a distance, organizations and professionals think that innovation acceleration is about ideas, it's about these brilliant people, and it's about technologies, RPA, AI, machine learning, augmented reality. These are all great tools, but those are not the pillars of success for innovation acceleration in the most innovative organizations in the world. The ones that have a broad portfolio of core, adjacent, and disruptive innovations. So to cover the essence of those pillars, we need to understand what they are. And the very first pillar is governance. Innovation governance is critical for long-term success in your innovation acceleration process. You must have defined roles and a structure for innovation acceleration. This is a very critical factor for long-term success and sustainability of your innovation acceleration program. Methods. You must have proven methodologies with clear execution mechanisms and develop a common language across the business. And collaborative leadership. You must develop collaborative leadership skills across all professionals related to innovation and value creation. Now, I'm going to go a little bit deeper in each one of these to show you what's behind each one of these areas. Now, on governance, it's important that you have a clear structure and roles and responsibilities defined on that structure. I'll show you one example of such structure. The language can be adapted for different organizations. It can be done at an organizational level. It can be done at a project level. We'll discuss later on how we scale some of these things. The fundamental portion of this structure is a business or process owner, someone who is intimately knowledgeable about the business or the process that you're trying to improve and innovate on. You must develop entrepreneurs. These are collaborative leaders who will identify, prioritize, and execute on what creates the most value in the shortest time and simplest means. They develop that improvement and innovation venture capitalists that I alluded to early on, and they are trained on collaborative leadership skills and innovation acceleration skills to be able to effectively lead businesses and teams that are trying to accelerate innovation in the organization. They will have few but highly trained business or project coaches. These business or project coaches, they are not methodology gurus. They are serial entrepreneurs and collaborative leaders. They have a track record of delivering disproportional value creation. They have the ability to properly coach others to achieve equivalent levels of expertise and results. The structure also has a business or project champion, and that business or project champion is truly a hierarchical leader who controls the resources and around the area in which you are attempting to accelerate improvement and innovation. So that can be done across an entire organization or business, or that can be something very local, let's say on supply chain or legal or HR. This champion has the control over the resources in that area and provides the guidance to the teams and the alignment with the strategies that are for the projects that are happening in his or her area. And above this all, you have a steering committee for your innovation acceleration. And the steering committee is identifying strategic priorities, identifying and vetting improvement and innovation projects in the organization. And they are also recognizing those successful entrepreneurs, collaborative leaders in the organization and teams. And they're looking for ways through the organization's leadership development program to accelerate the career development of those individuals. Now, this structure provides the building blocks to achieve disciplined innovation success. And if you ask me, well, Jose, what is the most common failure mode you see on organizations that are accelerating innovation? This is probably it. They are doing it without governance. They are doing it, and they will have some success. They will do a project here or there, or they will develop a new technology that's really good, and they will scale that for a period of time. But as I'm going to cover later on, the success is limited if you do not have governance. Governance becomes the ultimate barrier for scalability of your innovation acceleration program. Now, let's talk briefly about the methods or proven approaches for accelerating innovation in the organization. Remember that innovation is not an escape from disciplined thinking. It is an escape with disciplined thinking. So you must provide skill development for your professionals on some, if not all of these methods, so that they develop the capability to take a different perspective at problems and opportunities by using these methods, which is the essence of innovation acceleration, but also have a disciplined approach for execution that several of these methods will provide that. Now, we have 4 main methods that we see from a practical standpoint that are the most effective at accelerating innovation organizations. There are specific innovation methods that have been around for quite some time, but in the last decade or so, especially with advances in neuroscience, we have learned a lot more about them and the use of them and making innovation a discipline as opposed to an aha moment. They are all about thinking different and innovating based on different perspectives. So I will collect those under innovation methods. We have business process management, understanding the value chain processes that you have in your organization. How do you create value for your customers? How you deliver that value to your customers? What are the key business processes that you have, the most critical? And defining them and maturing those processes, but also very important and perhaps most important, ensuring there is true end-to-end process ownership. I see lots of organizations have beautiful processes, but very weak ownership of those processes. And ownership is an incredibly important component of business process management when it comes to innovation acceleration. Then we have methods like Lean, which are all about increasing the speed and of the processes and eliminating waste in those processes as you deliver value to your customer. For those of you who are Lean practitioners, you know it's about developing a reliable, balanced workflow through a pull system and eliminating waste. So this is about optimizing what you have and increasing the speed of your of execution. And you have Six Sigma, which is all about reducing the variation of your customers' experience, because your customers don't experience the average of your process. The customers experience the variation of your process. So there are some wonderful techniques from Six Sigma for reducing variation, for very sophisticated analysis that we can do to satisfy customers. So separately, these are very effective methods, but it's when they're combined that they become exceptional. And here is the main differentiator that I want to share with you. It's not about becoming a master of these methods. It's about understanding all of them and then deciding for your context and application, what is the method that's going to create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means. It's combining the methods with that improvement and innovation venture capitalist mindset and approach. And you also have to remember that methods alone, they do not transform businesses. People do. So it's about instilling these methods with the people who are most likely to create value for the organization and create value for the customers, create value for their own teams. And finding these people will be critical. Now, I want to move on to the other component, which has to do with the collaborative leadership component. It's difficult to see this one because most organizations have never gotten to that point. So they don't know what they don't know. So I want to summarize it with this innovation value creation maturity level here. There are different levels of value creation that are represented by each one of the steps. And in each one of the steps, I have what it's characterized by and what it's built on. So typically, most organizations who are in the beginning of their journey, it's characterized by individual brilliance. Some individual brilliant people in the organization who deploy great innovations and they create great value for the organization. They're driven, if you look at these individuals, they have high levels of passion, discipline, and resilience. Wonderful. A lot of organizations stay at that level and they're unable to scale. To be able to scale innovation, you need to now to look at your systems. You need to have clear innovation systems and mechanisms. You must have governance in place. You must have a structure with clear roles and responsibilities related to innovation acceleration. And often you see at that point very well-defined growth and technology accelerators who use the right technologies at the right time to scale the right innovations for the business. And that is the next level. Most organizations that think of themselves as being at the more advanced level, they are still building this structure. So don't feel bad if you're in the beginning of your journey and you say, oh my goodness, I don't have any of this in place. This is a journey, not an event. And this, in some organizations, this will be a long journey. And that's why you have to be disciplined about it, which is you have to be consistent with the purpose of innovation acceleration for value creation in the long run. The ultimate level is when you have broad development of collaborative leadership and innovation acceleration skills and methods. It becomes part of the fabric of the organization, where you have collaborative leadership development and innovation acceleration and innovation execution skills, techniques, methods that are happening on an ongoing basis. It's built on purpose, it's built on culture, and it's built on core values. Great organizations have a strong set of core values. They have a relentless drive for progress, and they have clear mechanisms that translate principles into action. And ultimately, the ultimate level is to build a culture of collaboration, innovation, and value creation. as the ultimate competitive advantage for any organization. So you may be thinking, well, what does that have to do with where we are now in a global pandemic and with all the disruption that's happening? Well, what I want to share with you is that if you look at the biggest barriers for implementation of innovation acceleration systems in organizations and for scaling innovation in organizations, the biggest barrier that you find among professionals and leaders who are leading innovation is time. They don't have time to innovate. They are very busy doing their day job, and they don't have time to think about and execute and experiment with at a level that's necessary to accelerate innovation. Well, in most businesses right now, some of those key professionals and leaders have a little bit more time than normal because the day-to-day business volume has been reduced. This is not true across the board, but it's true for a lot of organizations right now. So this is an opportunity to redirect some of those individuals and leaders to identify, prioritize, and accelerate innovation in the organization. Now, I'll quick review here, just a mental check to see if you're aligned. What matters most? Ideas, methods, technologies, or people? Think about that. Give yourself a moment and think, okay, if I was going to pick one here, which one matters most? All right, ideas. Ideas are everywhere. What are uncommon are people willing to put the reputation behind ideas. So that's not it. Oh, methods. He talked about methods. Methods are really important. Methods are important, but they do not transform businesses. People do. I am a certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. For most people, that sounds like a dangerous mental condition. It's not going to help them. So methods are important. We must understand those methods, but they do not transform the businesses. Technologies, AI, RPA, mixed reality, machine learning, long list of exponential technologies. They are fantastic and they can truly accelerate innovation in many portions of our business. But you have to be careful of technology because technology is like a new lover. It solves one problem in the short run, and it usually creates 10 new problems in the long run. So you have to be very smart that you don't use technology as a solution for a problem that doesn't exist, or worse yet, for a solution for a problem that can be solved by other means, which is the more common case. If I was going to tell you a rough breakdown of what I see with respect to technology implementation and deployment, 80% of innovation acceleration is not driven by technology. 20% is. The 80% that's not driven by technology is the one where I have a problem and I'm looking for potential solutions for the problem. The 20% could be that you have certain technologies that you're experimenting in different areas and you may have a problem that solution fits. But make no mistakes, the technology implementation and escalation that happens as a result of understanding what the problem is and choosing the right technology for the right context is the right approach for organizations that do that accelerate innovation successfully at scale. Then the last comment here is the last item is people. So it must be about people. And this is a trick one. It is about people, but it's not about all people. It's about educating all people, but really identifying who the right people in the business are. And these people, from the research and the practice that we have had for the past 25 years with some of the most innovative and successful organizations in the world, these people are only revealed by the test of execution. I can give them, I can give a resume review or a psychological profile test, and then I find who these innovators are. They are reviewed by the test of execution, and they have 3 distinct traits and behaviors that they exhibit. First of all, and it's not showing here, behind all of this, they have an alignment of the purpose of their life with the purpose of their work. There is a level of alignment there. Then they have a tremendous amount of passion. And passion here is not serendipitous love. Passion here is a lot more like an arranged marriage. They work their face off at something, they overcome challenges, and then they develop a passion for it. Discipline is not about following a regimented set of rules. Discipline is about consistency with their purpose. They are fanatically consistent with their purpose. And they have high levels of resilience. And resilience is not about being stubborn and never quitting and just keep doing the same thing. Resilience is about overcoming challenges together, and collaborative leadership skills is very important for that. And pivoting when it's necessary and going the longer route because they're willing to withstand the pain that's necessary to endure the journey, a pain that most people would avoid, and they will confront that because they have a worthwhile purpose that they're pursuing. And so the combination of purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience is truly what defines these highly successful entrepreneurs in the business. I'm going to give you a very quick overview just to show you this from a different perspective, a very quick overview on how typical organizations accelerate excellence and innovation. You have in all organizations a setup with individuals that are mostly sour face. By the way, this is pre-pandemic levels, has nothing to do with the current stresses of the disruption that we're undergoing. Before then, we had this highly paid professionals who are sour face, kind of going through the motions. They make a living, but they are not really excited about the work that they do. And you have a few happy faces, delusionally happy individuals in the organization. And honestly, don't know if they're a little bit crazy or if maybe they're fulfilled by that alignment of their life and the work that they do. So the way to find out is to inspire the self-motivated individuals to pursue something greater, something that's going to be great for them, something that's going to be great for their team, something that's going to be great for the organization and for the customers of that organization. So we inspire self-motivated individuals to make a real difference, real difference in the business and in the work environment. Now, this is not enough because inspiration and motivation is like a rocking chair. There's a lot of motion and you don't get anywhere unless you have a clear mechanism for execution. And that mechanism of execution has to be predicating on the definition of innovation being the implementation of new ideas that create value. That will make you create a system where you're very strong at the vetting of your ideas to create the most value, shortest time, simplest means. And this implementation rate for this mechanism must be such that 99% plus of what is vetted and accepted and aligned with the strategies of the organization, the hierarchy of the organization, that vetting mechanism will capture the best ideas that are executed to the end. Now, only a portion of this group here will achieve, will execute successfully through that funnel, if you will. And it's anywhere between 20 or 30% of the self-motivated individuals, by the way, if I look at thousands of projects across multiple organizations. And that's okay. By design, we're vetting those ideas up front because we're looking at here is to identify the individuals who have the passion, the discipline, and the resilience to execute innovation, which is the hardest portion. And you only find these individuals at the end when they execute and deliver strategy execution and value creation for all. Now, when you get those individuals and teams, you want to celebrate them across the organization. You want them to be the face for innovation acceleration in your organization. You want them to be the ones who are going to be on the fast track for senior leadership development in your organization, because now you're democratizing innovation acceleration in your organization. I can notice that some of the people who were sour faces before are changing their faces because they see up there that individuals and teams that are being celebrated could be their their colleagues in their department. They are not this technological expert from outside. They are not this high-level leader who is doing this, who is highly educated. This is now we have John over here who was sour face and starting to look like happy face because he sees Rick up there being celebrated. And John is having a water cooler conversation, real brutal, honest conversations with his peers and saying, is that Rick up there? Did Rick really deliver $3 million in value in that project and executed that in 7 months? And then people say, yes, John, that's Rick up there. Are you kidding me? Rick is as dumb as a door. How did Rick do that? Well, I don't know, John, but maybe you can do too. You're now demystifying innovation. These are not some genius. This is not Einstein up there. This is Rick, who I work with. And Rick has strengths and weaknesses, but Rick is a great collaborative leader. He's a disciplined leader with passion, discipline, and resilience to execute innovation. Now, if you take this to the highest level in the organization, now you have when you have alignment of purpose, when you define the purpose of the organization overall, this alignment of the purpose of the individual with the purpose of the organization, with clear execution mechanisms based on an idea meritocracy. When you have the full alignment, now you have an avalanche of innovation, and it truly gets accelerated at its highest level. Now, this is not an easy level to get to because you have to be incredibly disciplined for a very, very long period of time. And discipline is not just following regimented rules. You have to be consistent with your purpose as an organization for a very, very long period of time. And that's the ultimate definition of discipline. Now, very quickly, I'll give you a couple of cases here because of our time, and I want to give a little time to answer questions that may come through. This is one example of an engineering construction company, global, doing large infrastructure projects in more than 100 countries, and very successful at it. For a period of 6 years, focused on ideas and methods. I personally led the program for this organization. So this is not something that I'm benchmarking. This is something that I did for internally. And there's nothing wrong with this. You know, they had some good results from the improvement and innovation projects that we're executing. It was focused on ideas and methods. Then we shifted that. By the way, most organizations, I'm showing you here up to year 6, most organizations, innovation acceleration programs will die by year 3. More than 50% of all innovation acceleration programs die by year 3. Over 99% of them die by year 5. So we got to year 6, we should be celebrating, we didn't. We said, hey, we got to do more. What if we need to improve not 5 or 10% next year, but 5 or 10-fold? What can we do? Well, the practice was in front of us, and we needed to experiment. So we experiment with it. We say, well, we need to move the focus from ideas and methods and move the focus on developing collaborative leadership skills, creating a clear meritocracy of ideas and mechanisms for execution, and finding the right people, the people of purpose, passion, discipline, and resilience. We transformed the approach to innovation acceleration. And this was during a time where we're around the 2008 timeframe, where business was really difficult. We're going through a financial crisis at that time. There was a lot of angst about doing this during that time, but we did it. And what we experienced is that when we shift into focusing on the right people, providing them with collaborative leadership skills and innovation execution know-how, our results were slightly better in the beginning because there was high skepticism of the new ways of doing things for a period of time, and then they scale as more and more people became the face of innovation acceleration in that organization. And these are people like you and I. They're not the special ones. And by year 10, which is unheard of with organizations accelerating innovation for this long period of time, and if you have data on that, I would love to know, because I haven't been able to see anybody who's able to exponentially scale innovation value creation as we get towards years 10 plus. We had voluntary engagement that was 10-fold better, and we had value creation that was 8-fold better than before. They went on to win the Global Award of Excellence in Engineering Construction. They were ranked the #1 US private company for leaders and leadership development, and they won the Global Business Transformation and Operational Excellence Award in one of the biggest summits of its kind in the world. Now, another quick example here with an oil and gas company, which was an established oil and gas company that had a market value of about $2 billion in 2010 and embarked on a real business transformation, culture and business transformation built on operational excellence, entrepreneurship, innovation acceleration. And this organization reached $35 billion in market value 8 years later. Now, built on all of those great fundamentals and maturity levels that I talked about before, but most important, it was about the people. So to get to this level, you need to unleash the power of your people to go for extraordinary, much like we unleash the power of our people to go for extraordinary. And that means engaging everyone in the organization at all levels, creating a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms, and finding who are the right people, the entrepreneurs who have the purpose, the passion, the discipline, the resilience to help you scale innovation at your organization. Now, these individuals, they work for you right now. You don't need to hire them from outside. Some of them are idle. Some of them are looking for things to do, especially during this pandemic. This is your chance to provide them with development and structure and approaches that can allow them to rise and show what they can do. You have to develop in their collaborative leadership skill development, and you have to challenge them appropriately. The right people will rise as a result of that. Then you have to they need to learn and practice how to take different perspectives at problems to create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means. That's the essence of innovation acceleration. And you must create a system and a safe environment where they can take measure risks, where they can experiment and build the courage to lead. The difference between fear and excitement is what our brain labels it. It takes courage, it takes trust, it takes risk management to do innovation acceleration successfully. And ultimately, innovation is accelerated when you invest in your people to develop their collaborative leadership skills, and when you create an environment in your organization where great ideas and great people can connect. That true collaborative environment that underpins all aspects of that organization, that becomes part of the culture. So to wrap our discussion today, how do we predict the future and how do we adapt to this future? I have a short action items here that I would like you to consider. Remember, it takes disciplined people, disciplined thinking, and disciplined action to be great. The signature of mediocrity is not an unwillingness to change. The signature of mediocrity is chronic inconsistency. You have to be chronically consistent with your purpose. So be consistent with your purpose, leave your core values, especially right now, especially in moments of stress. Your real values shine through in moments of stress. Be very aware of them and make sure that you're casting a leadership shadow in the organization that has the right values. You have to build your innovation governance and a meritocracy of ideas with clear execution mechanisms. Start small and scale. Make it accessible to everyone in the organization. This is the time to invest in your people. You have to develop their collaborative leadership and innovation acceleration skills and techniques. This is not an event, it is a journey. You need to scale their capabilities across the business. And then finally, you have to let the test of innovation execution reveal those who have the purpose, the passion, the discipline, and the resilience to collaborative lead innovation, value creation in your organization. Now, I don't have the ability to predict the future. Nobody does. But what these approaches have shown me is that the ultimate competitive advantage that you can develop for your business in the long term is to build a culture of excellence and innovation. Not my excellence and innovation, your excellence and innovation. It's the blending of excellence and the blending of innovation, which is hard to do, which is a journey, not an event. It's the building of that culture that will create a competitive advantage that is very, very hard for any of your competitors to emulate. I appreciate everybody's time today. We have a few minutes here for questions. If you want to connect with me, you can. I'm on LinkedIn. We post our journey on LinkedIn, and this is the email contact, the website. That's a quick way that you can connect with us. I'm going to look at some of the questions that we have here. Thank you again, everybody, for participating. We have lots and lots of great questions. So I will look at, how do you find these right people? This is a question that's come up several times here. How do you find the right people in your organization? I think we covered this in multiple ways. Let me emphasize that they are only revealed by the test of execution. Now, typically, what we do is to allow everyone in the organization through some sort of introductory level training, if you will, to have an understanding of some of these basic concepts that I have shared with you. Maybe a 1 hour, 2 hour introduction with everybody about how innovation acceleration works, what roles they can play, what our governance looks like, what structure do we have in place right now, and then make that accessible to everybody in the organization. And then challenge the organization that we're looking for volunteers who have the purpose, the passion, the discipline, resilience to lead innovation in our organizations. And as you challenge them, there will be a subset of your organization that will step up. And then through a combination of nominations from senior leaders and the approval of self nominations, you have a smaller group that you spend longer time with them, developing collaborative leadership skills and innovation execution skills, teaching them methods, approaches, the structure, the execution steps for innovation. And then they identify, prioritize, and execute on projects that are aligned with strategy and value creation for the organization. We teach them all of that, and then they do the execution of the projects, and you see on the back end the projects that create the most value in the shortest time and simplest means, and that group now becomes their self-selected group of innovators in the organization. Then you scale them again through sharing their work, doing lots and lots of internal communication so that others can see what's happening and they can see innovators in the organization that look just like them. There is another question here. I like the visual of inspiring the self-motivated individuals, but here's where corporate life fails. Once you create an innovation, you promote these people into roles that are not suited for and do not feed their internal drive, and you lose their value as innovators. 30-second answer on that's a very, very good question. True, very true. You must create a system, and talent development systems are very connected with your innovation acceleration program. Talent developed systems that allow individuals to do what they do best. And if they are best as innovators, you allow them to play their role, and you can easily show that role creates disproportional value for the entire organization if you're doing it correctly. Well, our time is up. I appreciate everybody for joining today. We had over 2,000 leaders from across the world in this session. If you want to get in touch with me, you can use that email, you can visit our site, you can follow our journey on LinkedIn. It's a true privilege. I hope that you have insights here that can be useful for your own journey as you accelerate improvement and innovation in your organization. Thank you, everyone.